Hi, I'm Cormac.
And I'm Josh.
Welcome to the Living Project.
Be true, live wild.
Hello, everybody. How's boat life treating you, Josh?
Pretty amazing today, Macca. Thanks for asking. It's red hot. I am moored in a tiny, quiet place under the trees on the River Wey, and it's absolutely magical. How's base camp?
Well, all the windows and doors are wide open to the world to let the air flow, and anybody that wants to can just walk right on in. It's a hot, hot, hot day. Thanks for joining us for today's podcast. It's the first on our coaching journey with the wild. We're really excited. At the Living Project, we're passionate about the big questions and creating a more connected world. We believe the wild gives us valuable insight into who we are, and it holds us to account. As the author Roger Deakin says in his book Waterlog, most of us live in a world where more and more things are signposted, labelled and officially interpreted. There is something about all of this that is turning the reality of things into virtual reality. It is the reason why walking, cycling and swimming will always be subversive activities. They allow us to regain a sense of what is old and wild in these islands by getting off the beaten track and breaking free of the official version of things. There's 2 points in this quote that ring true for us throughout our coaching journey, and this episode in particular. The first is about the wild. It's a place to consider our truth away from the noise. And secondly, that we have an ability to challenge the official version of things, both within society and within ourselves.
Oh, that's even got me excited, Macca. I'm looking forward to today. And as you said, we're going to begin our series of discussions focused on using the wild to explore our truth and write our own story of life. I suppose there's a caveat for everyone to bear in mind that Cormac and I are not here with what we believe to be the answer to all things. We're two people with a commitment to and a love of human exploration and our relationship with the wild. And we have a belief that coaching and personal leadership perspectives are what enable us to fulfill the potential within us that we often dampen with fear and doubt. By undertaking journeys of self-exploration, we believe we're able to build a kinder world, and the Living Project's coaching journey with the wild is our tool. So, the first element we're passionate about connecting with is water. Human beings, of which Cormac and I are too, and you are largely water. So what better place to begin?
Using water, today we're going to focus on the power of reflection, specifically reflecting on limiting beliefs, or as Deakin would say, breaking free of the official version of things. So we're going to discuss our belief in the power of water to provide us with an opportunity for reflection. We're going to share some of our experiences, as well take the time to introduce us all to some powerful life coaching, which we can all use in our own time as we walk our own path. We believe that there is a key for everybody to unlock their truth and live wild. And by wild we mean our connection with our true selves and the world of which we're part. And our attention is to provide a number of keys along this journey.
Right then, come on Cormac, let's get stuck in.
Great, let's do it. One of our favourite pieces written about the water is by Hermann Hesse in his book Siddhartha. In the book, Siddhartha, who's on a search for truth, finds that he learns about his truth and about his mission in the world through listening to the river. By listening to the river, by watching the river and seeing its twists and turns and how it navigates through obstacles in life, Siddhartha realizes that he is indeed living his truth, and that's all anyone can do, is set out to find out their truth and live their truth, and to learn and listen from what's around us, from the people we meet and the wild journeys that we experience. Both Josh and I connect deeply with this understanding in our own quest to be true and to live wild. As you know, if you've been listening to the podcast up to now, Josh lives on a boat on the river. He's a keen surfer, and I myself am a keen scuba diver. We understand that we have collected a lot of beliefs from our socialisation. You know, from the schools we go to, from the parents that have brought us up to the best that they possibly can and have done a great job, but we've been socialised. We've learnt from our friends and the society and the culture that we come from. This is normal and it's helpful. It gives us a map in which we can navigate the world. Yeah, as we get older, we meet other people, we travel, we realise that perhaps our map is not the way others see the world. This allows us a small window, a small opportunity to question our values and beliefs, and if necessary and if needed, to perhaps change them.
Yeah, okay. So that idea of questioning that socialization, questioning those things, reflecting on those things, Maka. Let's start diving into these ideas of reflection. One of my favourite poets, writers, people, humans ever, Maya Angelou, says that in the silence we listen to ourselves, and then we ask questions of ourselves. So when we're thinking about this idea of reflection, that reflection is often the first part of any big question,
Yeah.
or an examination of ourselves, our truth, and our journey with the world. Now the key for us, right, in this quote is the question part. With some kindness. Not asking people to beat the crap out of themselves. It's when
we do that sometimes.
Yeah, when we're in that silence, when we're reflecting, what we see is what we believe we see right there and then. However, it's really important that we positively challenge this and ask those questions. That is this true, or just something I believe? Is it part of that socialization? Is it, or has it been created? Is it a programming from my youth? Is it a programming from what society and is it really true, or is it just something I believe? And if it's, and if it's just something we believe, then we know that we can challenge it because it's not necessarily true. It's just a belief. So let's share some examples of this concept of we are what we believe, Cormac.
Yeah, Josh. My example is a simple one around a limiting belief that I had, but I think it's became quite profoundly important and maybe a little bit debilitating. So, imagine singing in a choir, just aged 11. The teacher shouts out, "Who has a frog in their throat? Davy, it's you. Stand out." No wonder I developed a limiting belief, right? That I couldn't sing. So every time I attempted to sing, it just confirmed to me that I couldn't. It was a self-fulfilling prophecy. So I grew up over those sort of intervening years, believing I couldn't sing, but yet I was obsessed with music and the guitar, and I became quite competent at playing the guitar. But it always bugged me that I couldn't sing, and that I even more so that I had a fear of trying. It wasn't until I reached my 40s that I really addressed this belief. Crazily enough, I signed up for a coaching holiday on a Greek island, and as you do, and signed up for a course called Learn to Sing with Confidence, with Susie Self, who was an intimidating opera singer. Anyway, it took Susie Self, the intimidating singer, to help me. She took me and a group of other helpless singers through a process where we learnt to breathe. We found an authentic voice and we performed like Greek gods to the ocean. I remember it well, looking at the ocean and being told, just sing to the ocean. It's expansive, right? It's non-judgmental. The audience stretches to infinity, but it doesn't answer back. It doesn't say that was crap or that was good. It just listens to you. So it's quite powerful. And before, we did that, and then we led us on to actually delivering a performance in front of 100 people. I sang Here Comes the Sun by the Beatles. Those that know me know that I love the Beatles, so that worked perfectly. And so, I went from I can't sing to I can, and I do sing. And since that day, I've since performed at open mic events and even recorded some of my own music. But, Josh, in truth, I derive the most pleasure from just being able to sing Happy Birthday to people when it's their birthday, and I really enjoy that, and I enjoy hearing my voice singing it to this day. So that was my limiting belief, and that was my little journey to go on to overcome it. But I think in summary is to say you can overcome these limiting beliefs, and these little limiting beliefs can be so detrimental to us living our lives.
Yeah, I agree, and I think it's important to say now, mate, isn't it? Like, challenging limiting beliefs isn't easy, and you introduced that term, and it's that term of it's a limiting belief, it's limiting you. Now, you know it isn't easy, and some beliefs are, limiting beliefs are greater than others. And I think what you've shared, is that there's this recognizing that it's a limiting belief, and accepting that that there is a need for and a desire for change, and then setting actions and practicing them. And we'll come on to that in a bit more detail a bit later on. But I 2 years ago, up until 2 years ago, I had always desperately wanted to surf, but believed I couldn't. Believed that I didn't have good enough balance. I'm not the sporty one, and therefore I just won't be able to surf. And it's really funny for me because I've always found challenging others and society's limiting beliefs a lot of fun. A former boss of mine, hello Pete, if you're listening, he called me a constructive disruptor, which I secretly liked. But challenging my own limiting beliefs is a very different story. It's not something I've always been that great at. So when I decided to learn to surf as part of my healing and recovery, I was faced with all those little voices. You've got shit balance, you're not strong enough, you're too old. But I got in again and again and again. I failed and I learned, and I failed and I learned. And I think that's kind of, but you've shared your story too. Like, that's what it takes to reprogram limiting beliefs, practice, and being willing to fall down and get back up again. And that Japanese philosophy of ikigai talks, they use the phrase fall 7, rise 8. That talks about that idea a lot more in detail. So when I reflect on this little bit about those limiting beliefs, if we don't kindly challenge ourselves, we can be limited by our initial thoughts. And actually, you can now sing, and you enjoy singing Happy Birthday. And for someone who's only been surfing for 18 months, I'm okay. I love it, and I want to keep learning. My balance is actually pretty good. I disproved what I'd been told as a youngster, and therefore perpetuated myself. I do a bit of yoga, I stand up paddleboard, and I laugh now that what I told myself, those initial beliefs, almost stopped me fulfilling that potential. It almost stopped you singing. And we can link those things, that idea of recognizing a limiting belief, that accepting a need and a desire for change, setting actions and practice almost globally. Like, there are systems that we are all a part of that are set up on the premise that people are innately self-serving and not that nice, and therefore this aggressive success of self, capitalism above all, is the only way. That's what we're told, so that's what we believe. And if that's what we believe, that's what we become. So if we're communicated and we buy into the belief that people are out to get us, well, that's what we are going to become. But there's just as much evidence in the world, right, that people are good and kind and are more fulfilled when they're looking out for each other, despite all the hype around the opposite. Cormac, have you ever heard, you've heard of the term Ubuntu, right?
I've heard of it, but I'm not really sure I know exactly what it means. Enlighten us.
Well, I mean, it's a Bantu term that loosely translates as "I am because we are." I mean, it's also a user-led operating system on computers, but that's another story. But yeah, it loosely means "I am because we are." And if you or I would just say have a read about it, mate, or listeners, like, look it up. It's really interesting. And something else is, if you're thinking, "Oh, this is mad," people are not, you know, they're not kind. If you don't believe us, there's a book that both Cormac and I have read recently called Humankind by Rutger Bregman. And our part of changing our ideas on ourselves and the society and the world in which we live is what we digest. Think about it. Like, William Golding's Lord of the Flies is a work of fiction. Okay, it's based on one person's beliefs. Okay, in the base level of humanity. But there's actually been a real life Lord of the Flies situation where a group of Tongan boys were marooned on an island for over a year. This is in Rutger Bregman's book. And the evidence, which is not a belief, it is evidence of this reality, is entirely different. So think about it, right? We recognize these things, accept change is necessary, and then what actions and practice could we put in place in order to change that limiting belief in society? Well, if we imagine it, if we all chose to collectively believe in kindness, that is what we all become collectively kind.
As you were talking there, it occurred to me that one of the first books I ever read myself, outside of school, was Lord of the Flies. And it certainly had a big effect on me at the time. And as you say, I've grown up like most people, somehow thinking that the world is, dog eat dog. And it's only through travel and other experiences, and as time's gone on, that I've started to question that and think, well, maybe that isn't so true. But reading the Rutger Bergman's book has certainly put that powerfully into perspective. Thanks for sharing that. So let's think a little bit more in terms of our kind of like bringing that all down into our own lives and thinking, what does this all mean and what can we do about it? So I'd like you just for a moment to bring to mind your relationship with water. When you are in it, when you can hear it, when you can smell it, when you can see it and feel it, what's that like? Is it soothing? Perhaps it's calming. Perhaps it just tastes salty. But it certainly has an impact on our physical, emotional senses, doesn't it? In popular culture, water represents cleansing, being born again. So it's clearly seen as being a very powerful element. I hope that and our discussion today has started to put you into a bit of a reflective space for yourself. Imagine you are looking into some calm, flat water that's gently flowing downstream. You can see your face. The face looking at you is gentle, and it kindly asks you a question. What do you choose to believe that is holding you back? While you contemplate this question, let's consider the power of water in reflection and beliefs. Water itself, it has no limiting beliefs, does it? It isn't a sentient being, but it always gets where it's going. Funny that. It navigates obstacles, it accepts them, and it makes room for them, and it gets there whilst always being in the present moment. Its flow is constantly forwards, towards the ocean, much like life itself. Only we as humans, we create obstacles, but we create them in our mind, often in our mind, and we give power to those obstacles we've put into our mind, and they block our path, they block our way forward to kind of follow our path of truth. So if we were to bring these threads together in both our personal examples of reflection on limited beliefs and the scientific neurological evidence that shows us that any belief can be challenged, limits can be examined. A good place to do this is by considering our relationship to and connecting to the water element, as we've just done. Is it possible we have the ability to adopt more empowering beliefs, allowing potential to be fulfilled? Of course it is. So beliefs are only things we've been programmed to have, and that you and we have been taking on board, consciously or subconsciously. Einstein, yes, that Einstein, he's a pretty clever chap. He said something which is truly profound, and it's probably the only quote I can actually remember, but it goes something like this. The only truth is that everything we choose to believe in will one day be proven untrue. Wow. So, it really, if Einstein says it, it's got to be worth looking at, isn't it? It's got to be a truth that belief is only temporary, and one day it will be proven to be untrue.
I'm loving this conversation, Cormac. And
Powerful stuff.
I love getting Einstein in there.
Oh yeah.
The only truth is that everything will one day be untrue. I love people that I love that statement. It's the truth, and I'm like, well, it's my version of the truth.
And one day it won't be your truth.
Right. So we've talked about the power of water. We've chatted about the importance of reflection and the brilliance that can be had, and no doubt challenge, not denying that, okay, challenge and difficulty, okay, but the brilliance of owning up to our limiting beliefs and kindly challenging them, both in ourselves and potentially in the world around us. Next up, we're gonna touch on two specific coaching and personal leadership tools we have available to provide ourselves with effective reflection that challenges these potentially limiting beliefs. Now, the first thing we say, I kind of said tools. It's more just something to think about. This first one, which is language. The language we use is so important in creating habitual beliefs and patterns. And the key there is about habitual. So committing to changing our language in very tiny ways, but committing to it regularly and practicing it every day. There's so much evidence in neurolinguistic programming and psychology that this changing of the language on a repetitive basis can have a huge impact on how we feel and what we believe we are capable of. Now, there's a really cool example of this. I'll put a link to one of his videos, one of his YouTube videos in the episode notes. But Kyle Cease, in his Evolving Out Loud program, talks about learning to repeat the phrase "and I love that" when reflecting on our limiting beliefs. Like it completely changes the way we feel about something. If I stand in front of the ocean and I'm like, I'm too old to go surfing, like it's a statement. I've already restricted myself. If I add the phrase, if I say, if I'm too old to go surfing, and I love that, all of a sudden in my own mind, I'm a bit of a badass because I'm learning to surf in my late 30s. And it's just, focusing on that and taking practice. So, whether that is journaling, gratitude every day. And so you're reprogramming your mind to think, in terms of gratitude rather than what went wrong in the day, or whether it's adding a sentence on when you say something that's a bit self-disparaging or something like that. Now, yeah, so for me, that it does take practice, it does take commitment, but that commitment to understanding that the language we use is creating and patterns in our mind that we are reinforcing. So consider the language that we use, and then make a commitment to habitually practice different language, and definitely check out the Kyle Cease stuff that we'll put in the episode notes.
Yes, definitely well worth seeking out and learning more about. Um, yeah, language, Josh. Yeah, clearly really important. How we self-talk, how we talk to ourselves, how we talk to others, and the language we put out there in the world. What we say often becomes what we think, and it often becomes how we behave and how we act. So very, very powerful. So I thought, if you'll allow me, and our listeners can indulge, I was going to take us all through a visualization together, to really get into the mechanics of actually how we can examine limiting beliefs and powerfully, through utilization of all our senses, actually start to unpick them and overcome them.
I am in, Cormac. Be kind to me. Let's do it.
Let's do it. Okay, Josh. Okay, well, first thing is, if I just ask you to make yourself comfortable and just make sure that you're sitting comfortably with a straight spine and your feet, if they can, connected to the cushions or you're sat on or on your floor.
Yep, all
And
done.
once you've done that, then the next thing is really to just take a few slightly deeper breaths. Don't force it, but just some nice deep breaths, just to kind of connect with that.
And listeners are doing this at home too, right?
Yeah, I hope so. They can go through it. If they just want to listen, they can certainly do it later, whenever they like. But if they want to do it now, then go for it. So yeah, let's take a few deep breaths. And great. Once you've made a few deep breaths, just relax the breath, but just try and keep your focus still on your very natural breathing. So getting a sense of the inhale as your chest expands. Maybe you can feel some warm air coming in through your nostrils, and then the exhale. So just nice and gentle. Keep focusing on your breathing. And just as you breathe out, just sort of mentally say to yourself, relax, relax, relax. Okay, in this relaxed state, I'd like you to call to mind a limiting belief that you have. Crucially, a limiting belief that you would like to be free of. And at the same time, I'd like you to call to mind an alternative belief that you would like to adopt in its place. So this new belief should empower you. And when it's adopted, it will change your life for the better. So just relax and breathe and see what comes to mind. What belief would you like to leave behind, burn away? And what new belief would you like to put into its place? And if something hasn't come to mind, then really don't worry about it. Just keep breathing and just carry on listening to the visualization. And when something does come, just go with it. It could be something really, really small, along the lines of what Josh and I shared with you. It doesn't matter. Just go with it as it comes to mind. So if it's come to mind or not, what I'd like you to do is just to kind of get into the feeling of what's it like having this limiting belief. When you're living that limited belief, how does it look? How do you act? Perhaps you can call to mind people that you might be with when this limiting belief you become aware of it and you realize that it's perhaps not how you want to act in the world, or it's holding you back. So just try and feel how that feels. Maybe get a sense of who you're with, where you are. Maybe you can tap into some sounds or smells that are relevant to where you are in your visualization. So just sort of get into feeling that limiting belief and how it affects you. You know, in the case that you shared with us earlier, Josh, you were thinking about you couldn't surf. So when you were looking at the ocean, seeing the surf and surfers, how did that make you feel? So really try and get into that. And really important, if you can, is like really get a sense of the emotions that brings up in you in terms of that limiting belief, and how does it make you feel? How does it get you right between the chest and the heart? You know, what does it feel like? Okay, so now what I want you to imagine is just sort of stepping out of that moment of really engaging with that limiting belief. I want you to imagine that you are outside of a cinema and you're buying your ticket and you're walking into the cinema. It's an empty cinema, strangely, but nevertheless, you've heard it's a good film on today, and you walk right down to the front of the cinema, right into the middle seat, and you sit down. Get yourself comfortable. So that limiting belief you were thinking about, just call it to mind in a simple picture, a black and white picture of you inhabiting that limiting belief. So you've got that nice little black and white picture. It's a still picture. And as you are doing that, the curtains of the cinema screen are opening up. I just want you to put that black and white picture, just hold it up and stick it into the centre of the cinema screen. Just throw it up there and let it stick into the centre of the screen. And now, as in a cinema, it's moving, right? It's a moving projection. So the still picture starts to come to life. It's you in the picture, in the film. It's black and white, but it starts to move forward. So as you're watching the cinema, just see how the movie goes. And remember, you're inhabiting your limiting belief, whatever it is. It might not feel so good, but there's people around you. Maybe they're your friends and family. Um, where are you? How does it feel? How does it look? What can you smell? What can you see around you? And with all good cinema, we need some good sound. So turn the sound up a little bit on that sound, the volume. Make the black and white kind of shades a little bit more vivid. Bring those people around you and what they're wearing, bring it a little bit more to life. And let the story unfold through your limiting belief. How does it affect you? How does it affect people around you? What's happening to you right now as a result of this limiting belief? So the movie's starting to come to an end now, and as it comes to an end, it freezes into a single frame. So what I'd like you to do now is that single frame that you have now at the end of your picture, just turn the colour up. We're going from black and white to colour now, so turn it up. Let's have some yellows, let's have some reds, let's have some blues, let's have some greens. So bring your life and your world to the colour world. Okay, and now what I'd like you to do is just to imagine that still picture and the movie you just played. We're going to play it back, but really super fast, like to some kind of Mickey Mouse Disney music. And it's going to just go really, really fast, all the way back to the beginning of you on your movie. So, listen to that funny music. It's that kind of music hall time, and you suddenly find yourself way back at the beginning of the movie again. Okay, so you're back in a colour still picture. So just feel yourself in the movie screen, in that picture. So this time, we're going to acknowledge that we are the director. We're the director of our lives. The movie that's going to play out can be whatever we want. We're the director. We can play with magic in the movie. So we're going to now create the movie that we want to see going forward. So you're still sat in the front of the cinema, you're looking up at the screen at your colour photo, and it starts to come to life. I want you to inhabit now this new empowering belief. Even if you don't have the new empowering belief at this moment, it doesn't matter, because you are creating a movie. You're the director. So again, turn up the colours, let the sounds come to life, let the people inhabit your story. And now you're going to become the person who adopts a new belief. I can. I am. I will be able to do this. I can do this. And imagine yourself inhabiting that limiting belief, doing things that you didn't think were possible, saying things perhaps that you didn't think were possible. How are people around you reacting, your friends and family? How do you feel about this new you? Make it epic. Imagine, if you are surfing right now in your mind or on the movie screen, make it a big wave. Make it epic. You are the center. You are the star attraction of this movie. So in your mind, I'd like you to sort of talk to yourself, describe what you're seeing, what are you feeling. Are you noticing any sort of changes compared to how you felt when you were thinking about your limiting belief? What are you wearing? Are you wearing some cool stuff? What do you think you're achieving now that you are inhabiting a different belief? So play out the whole scene as you'd like it to be going forward. This is your moment to shine. Be your own, very own Steven Spielberg. If you need to change some of the characters in your story, do so. okay, we're coming to the end of the movie. So it now comes to an end, and it's in one frame, and it's frozen, and it's a picture of you. It's a color picture. I want you to reach up with your fingers and imagine you could pluck that color photo out of the movie screen and bring it closer to you. You've got it in both your hands right in front of you now, and you're looking at it. The movie's finished. The cinema lights start to go up a little bit. You can see the photo. Just have a good look at it. Remember that, how you felt, what you looked like, how you inhabited that new belief. And what I'd like you to do is just put that somewhere in your wallet, in the top pocket of your shirt, in your back jean pocket, somewhere that's easily accessible. And now we're coming to the end. The cinema lights have come up. You're on. The film is finished. Just take a little moment to gather your thoughts and return your attention to your breath. And and you've got that photo that will always remind you of the film you directed and how things could be. So, take a couple of deep breaths. Maybe just wiggle your toes and wiggle your fingers. And maybe take a good deep inhale and stretch your arms up above your head. A nice big stretch. And then now you're back in the world, and the cinema experience is finished, and you're ready to walk back out of the cinema into the bright lights and the warm air of the outside. Well done. So, I'm intrigued, Josh. How did you find that?
I think the first thing to say is that I found that visualization of setting an intention of a new belief and I suppose manifesting it in my mind, I found it very powerful. I don't think I need to share what the limiting belief was, but
No.
I think there's two things that I wonder if the listeners experience similar things to me, because it's actually, I went into that blind. That's what we agreed, like you would take me through that experience, and I found the first half of it really quite difficult.
Yeah.
Not in a I engaged with it fully, but it meant that I felt exposed and disconnect. The feelings that were coming up about this belief were being exposed and disconnected and not being great at communicating with other people because of this belief, and just reserved and removed. And I was getting pretty it definitely brought up a lot of emotion. And so listeners, if you had something similar, I hope you're okay. These are brave things, these are brave things to do, I think, to take us through these things, to really try and look things in the face. And then you obviously did that rewind, and at the point you did the rewind, it became this absolute confused, I almost wanted the noise to stop in my head. Like the whole idea of that Disney music and stuff, rewinding the thing, I was like, oh, it's like a bit of overwhelm.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden you're taken into that, okay, how do you want it? And I spent the second half of the visualization, I think, smiling. I think if there'd been a camera on this podcast, you'd have seen me smiling. And I found it very, very, very useful, and you and I have chatted about, both of us chatted about our belief in the power of being guided through visualizations, and I'm very grateful for you taking me through that one. And I'm going to enjoy now going away and using one of the other tools we've talked about briefly in this conversation, journaling, to remind myself of that experience, and to commit to remembering the feelings around not having the limiting belief, and having unlimited belief in that area, and changing that, because we all have limiting beliefs. You can be some Zen guru bloody master if you want, you've still got some limiting beliefs.
Yeah.
We're all on a journey. So I think the final thing is, for me, in terms of reflecting on it, and the last tool is ourselves, in putting ourselves in those situations and being prepared to fail, and like you said in the visualization, there's people around you, so there is support, professional, personal, whatever you require. But putting yourselves, the biggest tools we have available is ourselves, of putting yourself in the situation of looking at those beliefs and choosing to potentially try and reprogram some to fall and get up again on the journey, but keeping that intention, that unlimited belief in your mind. That is the human journey. And yeah, I'm really grateful, Cormac, so thank you very much.
Yeah, and I think you said something really important. These engaging in this process can be a lot of fun, but sometimes it can be really challenging and difficult. And if
Yeah,
it is, perhaps it's a moment to just say, maybe this isn't the right time. I just need to step out of this, and maybe I can come back to it at a later point when I feel able. I think that's your own gut, and you need to respect that at all times.
yeah,
So thanks for highlighting that, Josh. And I think the other thing is that this tool, now we've done it, you can adapt it for yourself.
yeah,
And you could even get your partner or somebody to learn the script and do it for you. You could do it for them, but
yeah. You could have a lot of fun with it, couldn't you?
you could have a lot of fun with it. And I think the key thing is repeating it. I've done it. I've done this technique many times myself, and I think it's saying, okay, I've done it once. That was powerful. Let me do it again. Maybe commit to doing it every day for 7 days along the same limiting belief, and really develop it. It can become very, very powerful. I've used this actually with very ordinarily inspired triathletes to help them improve their performance. And the feedback I've had is that this visualization technique for people who are particularly visual,
Yeah,
it really works pretty well. So
yeah, I
yeah,
agree.
stick with it, give it a go, and give us your feedback.
Great.
Excellent. So water, it's a core element. And as we've discussed, and it does ask us who we are, because it asks us to reflect. It holds us to account in that way. As we discovered, beliefs are not solid, and they can, if we allow them, to change state and flow away just like water. We can choose to adopt a new belief that best suits us in this moment to navigate the obstacles in what are sometimes choppy waters of life. It's been our great pleasure to share some stories and keys with you today to learn more about and use. We believe particularly in visualizations, and we love using them. So now is the time. Go and find some water, reflect and question yourself. Challenge a limiting belief that's holding you back. Next week, we're joined by Sawang Tongdi, an ordinarily inspired coffee grower in northern Thailand. Our conversation is as much a meditation as it is a story of a life committed to the journey for truth, to kindness, and to a deep connection to Earth. The week after that, we'll dig into a theme connected to Earth, planting seeds, discovering values, and committed to growth.
Thanks so much for joining us on the Living Project today. We hope you've enjoyed it. Check out the episode notes for further reading and listening around this theme, as all the work, all references that we've alluded to and mentioned on today's podcast will be listed there. We'd also like to acknowledge that in no way are we denying the existence of real societal barriers, which are very real for many people of differing contexts. These are not limiting beliefs, but structures which create privilege among some, including Cormac and I. And perhaps we might all consider how these societal structures are themselves based on limiting beliefs by those in positions of power. How can we challenge them kindly and effectively? So, if you've got any questions or you want to get in touch, we're on Instagram and Facebook at The Living Project 2020, and we look forward to connecting with you again soon.
You've been listening to The Living Project with Josh Bulpin and Cormac Davey.
Enjoyed it? Please subscribe, follow, rate, and share with everyone you know. See you next time.
Be true, live wild.